Well, Mr. President, I'm here today to stand up for Maryland and for all the students that could lose resources under an amendment offered by the gentleman from North Carolina, Senator Burr. Now, there's much that I admire about Senator Burr, but his current amendment would cause Maryland tremendous problems. The Burr amendment would punish states that make significant investments in those students who need extra help. This amendment would not do one thing to lift kids out of poverty or to close the achievement gap. In fact, it makes it worse. The so-called hold harmless provision that is in the bill does not hold Maryland harmless. It doesn't prevent any of the Maryland school districts from losing money. Under the Burr amendment, Maryland would lose $40 million. Let me repeat, under the Burr amendment, Maryland would lose $40 million. Now, Maryland knows that I've always been on the side of students, of teachers, of those who run programs, and the taxpayers who pay for them. We in America believe in public education, where one generation is willing to pay taxes to fund an education of the next generation. Title I and the Elementary Secondary Education Act was created to lift children up and to close the education gap. And let me tell you what the Burr Amendment would do. Right now, every county and Baltimore City would lose money. There are 24 school districts in Maryland, 400,000 public school students, 170,000, or 45% of our population is eligible for something called Title I funding. If the Burr Amendment passes, every single one of those boys and girls would lose academic resources that they currently get. Let me give you the numbers. Baltimore City, 12%. Baltimore County, 23%. Garrett County in Western Maryland, 20%. Somerset County on the Eastern Shore, 15%. From my students in urban schools in the Baltimore-Washington corridor to rural schools in Western Maryland and Eastern Shore, every single one loses resources, and if you lose resources, you lose opportunity. If we believe in an opportunity ladder, then don't cut off the rungs. It's not the schools that lose, it's the kids that lose. They lose resources and they lose opportunities. Now, I've heard from school superintendents across Maryland. They tell me the same thing over and over. Don't cut the money for Title I. Dr. Henry Wagner of Dorchester County over on the Eastern Shore says that the rural schools on the Eastern Shore will be impacted, and he would have to eliminate teaching positions, reduce reading and math services, and the very services to bring in parents would go by the wayside. Over in Washington County, the gateway to the Eastern Shore, Dr. Wilcox, the superintendent of Washington County Schools, described how a rural school would be harmed. In his letter, which he describes Title I, he said, Senator Mikulski, Title I allowed us to create hope. It enabled us to provide extra instructional support in literacy and math. It opened up windows and doors often shut to these boys and girls. Without Title I dollars, Washington County would have to cut this instructional support in literacy and math. He writes, Senator Burr's amendment is bad for children, and it's bad for all of the children in Maryland. And Baltimore City, where we've certainly had our share of problems lately, would be deeply cut. Right now, Baltimore City receives $50 million. It'll lose 10% of that funding. $5 million in Baltimore right now sure means a lot. If we cut that money, we're going to shrink pre-K access. The after-school and summer learning programs will go by the wayside. They go by the wayside. You not only have kids with time on their hand, but they will fall behind in reading in the very things that they had gained over the school year. And the professional development for teachers, especially those new teachers that we are bringing in, will be eliminated. I am so proud that Maryland allocates more of its Title I dollars to schools that need it the most. For example, 85% in Baltimore. Those kids live in poverty. It has the lowest wealth per pupil in Maryland. So states allocate more of its resources in this area. Maryland actually gets penalized under the Burr Amendment for putting the money where it will do the most good. And in fact, Maryland gets penalized for making education a priority. Well, I thought we believed in state determination. And if a state determines it's going to make a significant investment in public education and make the funding of the closing of the achievement gap a priority, why punish them for states that cut taxes, cut opportunity, and now we want to change the formula to reward their behavior when we should be rewarding the good behavior of states like my own? This amendment is bad for Maryland, it's bad for other states, and most of all, it's bad for children. 58% of the students who benefit from Title I funding will get less resources, less opportunity. Title I certainly does need to be reformed and refreshed. Senators Murray and Alexander should be congratulated in the way they led the committee through a civil, cogent process. But we can't make changes based on the needs of a handful of states that essentially have penalized their own children. Last time that Congress reauthorized the Elementary Secondary Act was in 2001. During that reauthorization, Congress clearly stated that it shall be a national priority, that Title I should be a priority. In that bill, Congress committed to steadily increasing funding for Title I, but Congress never fully funded the program. It never provided the adequate funds. The major effort that was done just 2 weeks ago was in the Appropriations Bill of Labor, Education, and Human Services. Senator Murray offered an amendment to increase Title I by $1 billion. Every single Republican on the committee voted against it. We can't keep doing this. We need to fully fund Title I. This isn't about statistics. This isn't about numbers. This is about human beings. The genius of America was that we believe in the education of our people, that we truly believe that the way we lift all boats in our country is to have a public education system that works well and is funded adequately. We've had a formula that has worked for Title I because it rewards those states who are willing to make public education and the next generation a priority. Let's keep the formula we have, let's reform where we need to be, and let's make sure that our focus is not on bottom lines, but that helping more children get to the head of the class. Mr. President, I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.